The third point on here is dashboards. And I think some people are probably quite familiar with dashboards. We've developed a library services dashboard, which supports the monitoring of performance. And actually, this speaks really well within the organisation that we sit in, which is primarily an IT informatics group. So they're very familiar with dashboards. And so monitoring our performance. So one of the key things here is just an example of where you can very simply demonstrate using the traffic light system how well you're delivering. So in this example, we have customer service. So in order to get the green light on customer service, we've identified several metrics to support that. And metrics include things like the number of queries that are sent to first line support, the number of queries that we are completed within 24 hours, number of people trained, etc. So. When you're looking at bringing in new products or new content, new information, we run business cases. We have to generate a business case. So, and this is done in the support of, with customers, with users, key stakeholders, in order to generate these business value statements. These business value statements have to be able to tell the senior stakeholders, the people that actually approve the budgets, whether what is the value of having access to that information, where does it have the impact, and why, you know, given all the information that we have, why do we bring it in? The next point, which we've done some work on at the moment, actually we're working on this, is actually categorizing our content. So we access 100 plus, you know, resources. Okay, we have a lot of resources, but when it comes to presenting that to your senior stakeholders, they won't want to see 100 plus resources. So how do we present that view to our senior stakeholders? It needs to be based on value to the business. It's got to be aligned to objectives, and it has to be aligned to the investment decisions that are made within the R&D life cycle. So one of the key points here is what we recognise is you have to decouple the content from the tools. It shouldn't matter how that content is delivered. It should be the fact that the content is relevant. So, for example, we are a pharmaceutical company. Our main part of the business is actually creating small molecules. So in order to be able to generate small molecules, we need to have access to chemistry information. So it's identifying the fact that our scientists must have access to chemistry information in order to be able to do reactions. And then looking at that information and actually saying, well, this, in order to access this type of information, it is an ability to operate. If we were to access additional chemistry information, that little bit extra, it will allow them to be innovative. So we've actually categorized our content in terms of the ability to operate, operational efficiency, and being innovative. So that helps to understand, well, what is the cost per user to be able to do that job? So for them to be able to do their job, how much is it going to cost them? And what is the cost per user to be able to do innovation? Because innovation is not cheap. It does mean that you have to be very creative. You have to experiment. And in the times that we're living with budget cuts, it needs to be understood how much that budget is required to support that type of activity. So you've got to know your stakeholders at the operational, the tactical, and the strategic levels. So at the operational level is understanding the questions that they need to ask. So this is where it's really important to be able to see what questions are being asked at that project level, and understanding what tools or products are being used to support them in answering those questions. At the tactical level, it's about implementing the strategy. So it's understanding the functional requirements for those projects. And they are actually key in helping us to generate these business value statements to support us in any requirements for new information. And then at the strategic level, clearly, it's about understanding, well, what is the strategy? What is the strategy for R&D? What direction are you going to be taken? Are there disease areas that you want to exit? Are there disease areas that we want to go into? And we need to understand that in order to be able to align our profile, our portfolio of content to those requirements. So my final point actually is to say, well, you need to take what we found very beneficial for us is to do a 3 to 5 year strategic review, to look at the full supply of the information that has been brought into AstraZeneca and its external information. So it's not just about paid information, it's also understanding the place and position of open access information as well. So from the moment that it's been brought in right through to when it's actually applied, and understanding who in the company is involved in those discussions. So clearly, you know, from the things that I've presented today, there are opportunities here where we could partner with publishers to help us to identify the cost versus value of access to paid information. It is clearly a balancing act for us. And I just, with all of those initiatives that we discussed, I just want to acknowledge that there were quite a few people involved in that discussion. Thank you.